How many of you have ancestors or relatives that fought in World War II? My husband's raising his hand. I'm raising mine. Michelle's raising hers. Diane. Helen, do you know of any of your relatives that have fought in World War II?
I have in-laws, or one in-law, Herbert Brown, that served in World War II.
The Navajo Nation is very proud of their veterans, and they work very hard to give them support. We had the fun assignment on our mission. One of our ward members, branch members, was a code talker. And anytime we had a ward party that he came to, especially if people out of the branch were there for some reason, everybody found a napkin so they could get his autograph. They were just so very proud of him. Are you laughing at Diane's throwing dog toys, or are you laughing at Navajo children being excited at the code talker?
I love to hear about a crowd treating a code talker like a rock star. I think that sounds fun.
They did. They were very, very proud of him. His wife he was not allowed to tell his wife he had been a code talker until their kids were grown. For years and years and years, he had to keep it secret. And the people on the reservation did not know what a dramatic change their men had made in the outcome of World War II. Did not know in the outcome of.
Well, you're on here twice. Did you see that?
Michelle is on twice. She'll have to figure out if that's on purpose or not. Now just once. Okay. Angel, did you say that you had any relatives that had been in World War II?
Yes, my grandfather, Grant Lisenby Thatcher.
He was a what?
My grandfather, Grant Lisenby Thatcher. He served in the Navy.
You're telling me his name. Okay.
Yeah, he served in the Navy.
Good. Good. Well, that's what we're going to talk tonight about, is military records. And military records have existed in the United States since before the Revolution. So we have been around for a long time. Some military records give a lot of family history details, especially pension records. But it is very fascinating to me to see all of the things that we can learn about a family member who served in the military. There are 4 main sources in the United States for military records, and they are Family Search, Ancestry, Fold 3, and the National Archives. And so we're going to talk a little bit about each one of them in order. But also, my son said, make sure that you squeeze in these facts. So these are some of the things we need to kind of be watching for. We need to be alert to what the person's unit number was and what their ship's name was, if they were in the Navy. If we come across that in other records before we find the military records, we should keep track of that. Also, we should pay attention to what somebody's MOS is, if it's listed. And we should also know that an MOS changes from war to war. Now, what that means is what's your military assignment. So, for example, my one uncle's MOS, which we found unexpectedly on entering the United States after World War II ship records, said that his MOS, and it gave a certain number, and when you looked up that number for World War II, you found out that he was the bugler. Everybody else that was around him on the ship were artillery soldiers, infantry soldiers, but he was a bugler. And this particular uncle of mine was a banjoist. Yes, Diane. Or are you saying goodbye? Okay, we'll see you later. And so that was very interesting to us, that he had been able to use his beautiful music skills while he was in the Army. The service number, if ever you come across a record that lists their service number, be sure you record it. And I will point out later how easy it is to save records that you find on Ancestry. And so make sure you save them on Ancestry. And it's so easy to transfer Ancestry records sources to Family Search that will be an easy way to get those records onto Family Search. Okay. What is the best place to start? Let's write down on a piece of paper, and I already wrote down my relative, but Angel, tell us again your grandfather's name.
Grant Lisenby Thatcher.
Okay, and do you happen to know off the top of your head what his birth year was?
Oh, no, but I can look.
Well, you look while I get started, okay? The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go to Ancestry and just look and see. Ancestry is pretty easy to search because, so I'm going to Ancestry. Ancestry has a very easy military searching line. So if we go to Ancestry and go search and go to military, then right away we're in military records. And here are the different kinds of military records that are available on Ancestry. Okay, so we are just going to search Grant. Now we could instead search on the people that I searched on to get ready for the lesson.
Mhm.
Did that spell correctly, Angel?
Yes. 1924.
1924. But I think it'll be more fun if we can see what somebody else might find. Okay, these are ones that are likely him. Draft cards, the BRILS death file, and I don't know what BIRLS stands for, but they usually have a lot of basic information, but not a lot of deep information.
They all look
well,
like him.
Okay.
Mhm.
Soldier, veteran, and prisoner roles. That sounds interesting. And that's in a couple of different times. So far, this is what we have learned about him. If this is him, we can tell his birthday. We know that in 1945 he lived in Provo. We know that in 1942 he lived in Utah County. We know his father was Clifton B. and that his mother was Cleo.
Yes.
If these military records are him, that is how much we have learned about him without even scrolling down to the next page. So, and bonus case files, a lot of things. Now, since we're showing my screen and not Angel's, I'm going to pretend that he's related to me. I'm looking to see if I have an Ancestry file already opened. Darn it, I don't. That means I turned off Ancestry. That means I have to log back in. Okay. We're just gonna put him on. I thought it would lock me out and I'd have to lock me back in. It didn't. I'm here. Okay, so maybe this isn't going to work so good because you have to remember that you have to remind me of this, Angel, after we're finished, and that is to take him out. Okay.
Okay.
Because I'm listing him as my relative, which he is not. Okay, and his birth year was 1924.
24.
Okay, so now we can go back to that search page. And let's try the BIRLS death record and see what it says. It says that there's no initial record to look at, but that his birth date and his death date. So we could write those down in our records. And 17th of March, 1978. And it gives us his social security number. That I would almost expect that to be instead his service number from the Army, which would help us if we were to, like, for instance, look for a pension or a service record, then that would be the number we would use. And it tells us the day that he was discharged. So if I click on save, it gives me the option to just save it in a pile of documents or to save to someone in my tree. So I'm going to save to someone in my tree. And it didn't pull it. There he is. It pulled up his name. I didn't even have to do it all. I can say attach. It's saying we know this side is what the record showed. This is what the BIRLS death files show. The information's what I want. Well, let's add the full birth date. And so I saved that to my tree. And now that is a source in Ancestry. I didn't have to do an attached routine. And now it's going to be there so easy to add to Family Search later. Except, of course, that I won't, because I'm pretending like he's my son, which he is not. But that one was how easy we did that. And now it lists a source here on the sources. So if I go back one more, I can come up to another one of his, or I have to go back twice, 3 times, because I wanted to look at this one that is military records that includes veteran, soldier, prisoner, and prisoner records. So let's look at that one and see if that one is interesting. I thought especially might be because it was prisoner, and I kind of been thinking prisoners today. And it's crooked. It gives us his address and his county in Utah, his education list, except that they didn't ever circle that, but they had room to. And so that is not as much new information as the previous one was. But that's information about him. The one thing that did tell us that we didn't know before is his house number. You know what I did? I got off of it without saving it. Well, this is a different one. But that one is also one of him. So any of those we could add like we added the first one. Now, bonus. There was this one that was called bonus. Did I already lose it? Let's see what. Oh, nope, that's not him at all. Okay. So that is how easy it is to search in Ancestry. Now, one time when I was searching in Ancestry and I searched all collections instead of just the military, and this is the military information I came up with. I searched for Don Edward Wilden. And I searched for him. And I was really wanting military records because I knew very, very little about his military service, and somebody said, "Oh, did you know that Uncle Don served in the Battle of the Bulge?" And I thought, I don't know anything about that. And I would have thought that I was the one that would know about military things. So I looked up this source that came up on this search, and it's arriving passengers in New York. So I looked to view it. It says that these are people that came on the ship, the Queen Elizabeth. Well, my Uncle Don was a cowboy. He ran away from home when he was in high school. Well, he didn't exactly run away from home. He and his brother decided to run away from home and join the military. So he did, and he decided the military life was not for him. So he left the military and hid out being a cowboy in Wyoming because he didn't want to go back to the army. And then during World War II, he started having regrets that he had done that, and went in and signed up and enlisted, and they accepted him. And then he served in the military, including the Battle of the Bulge. So here we find, and this is a ship's passenger list on the Queen Elizabeth. And if we know a little bit about history, we know that the British government was so happy to have had American soldiers help them during World War II that they used their fancy tourist ships, the Queen Mary and the Queen Elizabeth, take soldiers home after the war. And so here it says that on the Queen Elizabeth ship in October of 1945, and it says that the unit number was this. The unit designation was 275th Infantry Regiment, Company F, 2nd Platoon, and here is the list of people that came. And here is Weldon Don Edward, along with his number that all of his service records are going to be in. So we wrote that down. And like I said, his MOS was bugler, which was way different. He was the only bugler on the whole. We went a couple of pages each direction on the Queen Mary, on the Queen Elizabeth, and he was the only one who had a MOS that was not an active fighter. I think 729 was infantry, but he was the only one with this unusual MOS. So that told us some things about him. Now, once my son knew those things, he looked up on Google that unit and also that MOS, so that he found out he was a bugler. And in the records that he found under that unit was the information about how they were transported to the Battle of the Bulge. They weren't the first soldiers that were there. They were brought in the day after. And they were shipped from Belgium in cattle cars because that was the fastest way to get them to the Battle of the Bulge. And they fought, if you've read the history of the Battle of the Bulge, it was a very, very difficult battle that lasted many days. And but after that was over, his unit, and my son found all of this by searching Google, his unit decided to have a talent show. And so on the talent show, they one of the soldiers wrote home a letter to his mother, which is findable on Google, in which he told his mother about this talent show. And one of the things that he said was, I recited this poem, and I was accompanied on the guitar by one of the other soldiers. Well, one of the things Uncle Don had always told us was that he took his guitar with him to Europe, and that the other soldiers always took good care of him because they wanted to make sure that they could still hear his music. And so that sounded so much like our Uncle Don, even though he wasn't listed by name. Then later in the program, it said that one of the numbers was one of the other soldiers sang cowboy songs on his guitar and he sang and played on his guitar. And that for certain was our Uncle Don. So we were just delighted to have that history of our Uncle Don. Now, is that enough to get his temple work done? No. But is that enough to help us know him and love him? Yes. So I can click save, and it says save to someone in your tree, and I can save him. We already did that as I showed you. But so here we did two kinds of searches on Ancestry. We did a general search and we did a military search. And a lot of this information that we received was from the hints that we got on those things. And here are some more ideas that are listed about him. Obituaries from Cody, Wyoming, newspapers and marriage records. He didn't marry for a really long time, and then he married a lady who had been single for a very long time. And so those marriage records exactly were good to find. Now I'm going to show you one of Charles's relatives. This was one I happened to think of today. Frances Marion Parrish. Now, about all that we really knew about Frances Marion Parrish was that he was a nephew of Charles's grandfather, and that he had been in the Navy during World War II, that he was in the Bataan Death March, which happened when Japanese armies went into Manila in the Philippines and captured every American they could, made them hike for days and days and days as prisoners, and used every excuse they could to shoot one. If they stepped over and picked something up, or if they tried to eat or anything else, then that was the excuse for the Japanese soldiers to shoot them. And we know that he came home with his back scarred from beatings, and that he suffered alcoholism through his life because of the inability to handle the horrific things that he handled during the war. But only a couple of sources are listed here. If we go to his sources, one is a census, one is a death index, but we have here, and we got it because records had been indexed, a list of United States World War II prisoners of war from the Japanese. And it is an indexed record, and we can't look at it itself, but here it tells us quite a bit about him. And so this tells us his unit number, his service number, what his military unit was assigned during the war. And so that verifies what we had been told by the family, that he had been a prisoner of war because of the Bataan Death March. And if we were to study out, we were to look up these other things, then we would get more information about how these events happened in the war. Because I have a son in the military who's very interested in military history, and in fact, he taught military history for a while at New Mexico State University. This has been interesting to us, and we've been pleased to be able to see it. So we could also do a search for him then on Ancestry, and we could search for Frances Marion Parrish. And so it said, oh, we already know from your Hugo family tree that this might be him, is it? And so that quick, it would fill in the other blanks and will search for us. And so here it lists that we have already listed, but I did this tonight in getting ready. Ancestry has a set of files called World War II Allied Prisoners of War. And so I searched on that and found him. And then it has others down here also: Social Security, California Death Register, select military registers, and those other things. But let's look under this. This one is very plain. This page of prisoners of war, just his name and his rank. That's about all that's on that page. But I still attached it to him. Okay, but let's look. We don't know very much about him, so let's look on his. There, one of these was a marriage record. Let's look on the marriage record and see what it tells us. I hope it's still here. Find a grave. We should look at that later. Have you seen me pass it by? I didn't think it was that low. Sometimes, in order to get the more complete history of a person, you need to look at many roles, military roles, and you can find out more of the history. And one of my uncles had always told the story, or at least the nieces and nephews believed, that he had survived a ship casualty during World War II, and that he saved the life of the son of J.C. Penney, and in so doing, having his feet in the water in the lifeboat had caused him lifelong foot problems. And by reading all of the different military registers from year to year about him, we found out that he was in the Panama hospital, that he was there with the son of J.C. Penney, but that he had flat feet and he hadn't been on the ship that drowned, that faltered himself. But nonetheless, it was interesting to read that. Okay. I know there was the marriage record here because I looked at it and left some things to show you about it. So help me look for it. Well, I guess we're not going to follow that through right now. Perhaps we will find that if we go to Family Search. Because on Family Search, it is a hint. And we can see from this hint that in the California County marriages, someone with this name and the same name as his father, so that is in fact him, was married in California. So if we follow this through, we can see that Francis Marion Parrish, and it lists his father and mother, show up in this marriage record, along with Sidney Brick and Teresa Kurzenbrock. Now that is important for us to remember because we need to make sure that her parents are listed in Family Search. And so I attached these earlier. You can see that they're attached. And so now, except not the parents, not her parents. So those have now been, oh, maybe I didn't finish attaching. So it does say attached, doesn't it? Because here it just says return to family tree. Okay, so if we go to the overview of, not the overview, that was a mistake. If we go to his details, then we could go down and see if his wife is listed properly. Because now we found the marriage record, we want to follow through with what we learned from that marriage record. And earlier it just said Virginia, but I added the rest of the name from that marriage record, which was Virginia Lee Ginn. So now I can click on her record and I find Virginia Lee Ginn. And I can go down to the end of the details and I can see if her parents are listed, and they aren't. But now I know who they are because I learned from the marriage record. So now I can go to add parent and I can add her parents. So her father is Sidney Brick. And I can follow that through to add him. It's not going to let me on this sheet because I haven't said deceased. And until they know that somebody is deceased, they're not going to let you go on. And they also have to know the sex. They're not going to let you go on to the next screen. So now it's going to give me some different options to choose. Now I'm not ready right now on class time to go through and add those options. Now the name Kirstenbrock is the name that was listed on her marriage record. So I can be sure that that's who it is. But do you see what we've been able to do? We have been able to add a wife and her parents to Family Search using the information that we found there. It also says we have a possible duplicate. So, and the reason I'm going through this is just to remind all of us of how we put in the hints that we have learned, how we use them to make Family Search do more. This I chose here to switch this because the person, here's a number for Virginia that I already, this is not the way that I added. This is the one that somebody else says might be her. This, I can tell by the number, is the one that I had added the name before I just had Virginia, and I added Virginia Lee Ginn. And so then as I look at this record, you can see that I knew that the spouse was Frances Marion, but the other copy of her in Family Search tells where she lived, who she married, when she married them, who her parents are, who her siblings are, and all of these sources for her. So that is a much better representation of her, and it is in fact the same person. So I can click continue, and then I can look at them again and say everything about her was already on this second copy, except I need to verify that her marriage to Frances Marion Parrish wasn't on her, but now I can add it. And so now I can go to the bottom and say, yes, this is the same person. Continue again. Then it's going to say, please tell us why. And I'm just going to click on this thing they already wrote, which said all vital information and relationships match. And then I can finish the merge. Now, anybody that looks up Virginia Lee Ginn will know about her marriage to Marion Parrish, Frances Marion Parrish, and will also know about her parents. So that is what we always do. We always follow the hints through and connect them to other people. And sometimes that takes a bit of time to verify all of those things. Now I could go back to his obituary, and in his obituary, it's going to list all of his children and more information about his wife. One of the things I am going to want to do for sure is look him up. And I thought I had it pulled up here, but I don't see it, to find him on Find a Grave. And on Find a Grave, it's not going to tell me a whole lot more about him. The one thing it is going to tell me on Find a Grave, do I have time to go through all of these things? I learned the cemetery from one of those other sources, which then told me, may help me to find his memorial. His memorial and his wife Virginia's do not have too much of a bio. It would be good to go back and add the bio. A biography. The only thing that it did tell me on his memorial was that he had earned the Purple Heart. It didn't say anything about being a prisoner of war. It just said that he had earned the Purple Heart. But I was pleased to see that military sign. So that is examples of finding some military records in Family Search and in Ancestry. Now, I thought I had pulled up here, but I certainly am not seeing it on my tabs. And I'm sorry, I lost that train of thought. No, I didn't see them just appear. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is go to fold 3. When you fold a flag, you fold it in half lengthwise and then in half lengthwise again, which is 2 folds, and then you fold it triangles going up from the bottom to the star side, and then you fold the grommets down into the fold. And that is the appropriate way to fold a flag. So they call that folding it 3 times. So the website that tells about military records is called Fold 3. And if we didn't have a clue as to why it was called that, we would never, my brain would not remember Fold 3. Fold 3 has a lot of military records. Did I already mention that over this weekend, they are adding something like 89,000 indexed prisoner of war records and missing in action records. So they are trying more and more to have more records. Now, if I were to go to the home page of Fold 3. Oh, first I need to tell you, Fold 3 is now owned by Ancestry, but it was, before Ancestry took it over, you had to pay to be able to look in Fold 3. And so Ancestry decided, I think, that that was a good way to do it. Not only is it owned by Ancestry, so Ancestry does the work to help it improve, but they get paid a second time because if you look at Fold 3, you have to buy a subscription. Unless you go to the Family History Center and look under every one of our computers should have an icon to take you to paid subscription sites that are free at the Family History Centers. The church has an agreement that those key places are free. So there's Fold 3 and newspapers.com and several other of those that are called premium paid prescription websites. So if we come here and we want to search for somebody, we can narrow it down a little bit by going to World War II or whichever conflict we wanted to go, and we could put in more things. Let's put in Grant. Let's spell it right. Grant. Oh, my husband says I still didn't get it. Grant Lisenby Thatcher. And now I'm going to go back and collect this. Now, do I have it right? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and it pulled up only one record. It pulled up his World War II draft registration. So that is also on both Ancestry and Family Search. So probably Angel has found that already. Have you?
Yes.
Okay. Who else has a military person they would like us to look up? If nobody else comes up with one, I'll do my dad. Yes.
Sorry. I would like to see what other military records are there for my grandfather,
Okay,
possible. So his name is Louis Berrigan Cooper.
Lewis, spelled that way?
Yep, spelled that way. Well, I mean, okay, I've seen both the Spanish and that one. So
Okay.
Berrigan, Barragan,
Okay,
Cooper. So he was adopted by and he was in the Navy, and Cooper, not Cooer.
okay.
Try again. Yeah. Barrel maker. Yeah. He was adopted by his stepfather.
Now, what was his name when he entered the Army? I mean, whatever he entered.
It was Cooper. It was Louis Berrigan Cooper.
Okay. World War II, he served in the Navy. His ship was the
Prometheus. Okay. He
Prometheus.
was in the Navy. He was actually a underwater welder. He actually
Oh, wow.
was welding. This is new information I didn't know until like just before he died. So I didn't get a chance to interrogate him fully. But only he would fix the boats on the bottom underwater.
Wow. Well, it said something about
very dangerous.
that his designation was something about the hull. So that makes sense, doesn't it? Cooper Louis Berrigan, and his service number, his rank, and when he was assigned to this ship and when he was released. So he was there from July of 42 to February of 43. And the ship was the Prometheus. So if you were to write down that service number, then that might help you later. Down here, he is on the Menard. And let's see what this muster roll looks like. Muster roll of the crew of the USS Menard, and it has about the same information. Now, if you were to look up every one of these muster rolls and do like I did on my uncle who was in Panama, you can see how things change with him from time to time. You can watch his rank increase. We could watch my uncle being reassigned to the hospital again. We were able to go to, first we had to go to Google and figure out who the sons of J.C. Penney were. Then we had to look up each of those sons and see if in fact one of them was on the same ship. And so, but we were able to watch the progress of our uncle's foot injury through the war by looking at successive ones. And as he was changed from ship to ship and from ship to hospital and from hospital to ship and home, then we were able to follow those by following through the different muster rolls. So there he is in that one. Now we could save him to Ancestry really easy, because since Ancestry owns Fold 3, they've made this button over here to save to Ancestry. Now, because he's not on my tree, I can't save him to Ancestry, but you could save him to Ancestry just with that click. Okay, so now let's go back and see what other things it shows about him besides muster rolls. On one of my uncles, in the Ancestry search, I was able to find a picture of him in uniform, and his family did not have a single picture of him in uniform, but Ancestry did. Muster rolls, muster rolls, muster rolls. And these two ships seem to be the two that he sticks with the most. So my husband says he's been watching and it showed different different information on the different roles. Hull designation. I don't know what the hull designation is. Oh, maybe that is his job, is hull repair AR3. Now, it did not give us any further information like pensions, but let's go to the Civil War. I'm going to click both Civil War and Civil War Union, and I'm going to look for William S. Michael. My husband's just reminding me I have 5 minutes. So here are different, and as long as he's from Missouri, it's worth looking at. It tells us his military unit, his branch, different things there. I was also able to get from Find a Grave, from his cemetery picture that's on Find a Grave, the information about what unit he was in and what years he was in the Army. And I would use that information if I wasn't able to get this other information about him. So that's one of the hints that you get as you're putting together the puzzle. Here it does say that his pension numerical index is on this page. Let's look at this. This is just an index of who got pensions. It doesn't tell us much more about him on that page. If we were to search for his wife, who got his pension as a widow's pension, we'd be able to look at the different pages that she filled out in order to qualify for that pension, in which she listed all of his marriages and all of his children. And so that was informative to us. A lot of times you don't find out everything you want about somebody in one place. You usually have to find a piece of the puzzle here, and a piece of the puzzle here, and a piece of the puzzle here, and then later you find the piece that hooks them together. And that is often the way that research is. So that is an example of things that you can find in fold 3 as you research in fold 3. Now, the last of the 4 sources that I told you about is the National Archives. Now, when you're looking for the National Archives, there is another website that has almost the same address. So make sure that you get the one that the address is .gov for government, not .com. It's not, you don't want one that's a company, you want the one that is the government source. So when you go to the home of the National Archives, it gives you these kind of options. And if you come down here, it will say research your ancestry and research military records. And probably you start with researching your ancestry, but later you want to research military records. As you do this, you need to know that there was a major fire in St. Louis at the building where they were holding lots of military records, including 80% of military records from World War II. And so 80% of the military records from World War II have been lost. However, if you follow this form and request military records from World War II, and you list on there that you are willing to take the best copy available, they sometimes will send you burned fragments. And sometimes burned fragments is more of what you wanted than nothing. So we're going to want to use both the research, your ancestry, and research military records. And this is going to tell you what records they have, topics to look for, and how to search. Just to see what happens, let's look up William S. Michael and see if it's able to pull up anything for him. No, because I didn't put William S. Michael in quotes, and so if it's got William and Michael in the same article, it's going to list them. But these are very, very helpful records. One of the ways that this was particularly helpful to us is that we knew our ancestor's name was Charles Orrin Everett. It had been Charles Orrin Everett in all of the records prior to the Civil War, when we weren't able to find anything prior to the Civil War, until my mother got the brilliant idea to look for his marriage license, but not tell them who he was, just tell them who his bride was. So she searched for the marriage record of Elizabeth Notman and found out that Elizabeth Notman was married to not Charles Orrin Everett, but Charles Orrin Witham. And so then we asked for the service record for Charles Orrin Everett and got nothing. But when we asked for Charles Orrin Witham, we received his military record, which ended with a record that he was supposed to be in the hospital in Ohio, and they looked in all of them and couldn't find him. So apparently he decided he didn't like being in the Army hospital during World War II, and that he just felt good enough to leave. So apparently he just left and thought maybe since he did that, it'd be good to change his name. But the National Archives has all of the records that are available on all of the servicemen that have fought for our country since day one. And so when I sent for Don Wilden's forms, even though I could only get the best copies, and they told me at first that all the records had been burned, and I wrote back and said, well, send me anything you can find. I'll take the best copy you've got. And it was a 1/4 inch thick when I got it. And it didn't really tell me anything I wasn't able to learn from some of these other sources. Now, if I had listened to Diane always says, I have a friend that researches at the National Archives. Now, this doesn't apply to COVID, but it's going to apply soon after. And he will do the search for a lot cheaper than you can have the government do. You can fill out the form, and he will take the form and check out the records itself. So I paid $70 for Uncle Don's service record, and she probably could have gotten it for me for about $15. So listen to Diane when you want something from the National Archives. There are forms that you need to order these things, and these forms are listed. Where's my mouse? I don't see my mouse. Well, they are listed here about which form you need for which record that you're requesting. And so if you were to print out the form from this site and give it to Diane, or contact her and get the address of her researcher in Washington, D.C. But very, very much information can be gained from the National Archives. Pretty much in order to join the Army, you have to tell who your parents are. And so you get a lot of information there. Also, the government in the early days did not always have enough money to pay the soldiers. So they would say, oh, we'll give you this coupon that you can exchange for land. And sometimes the soldiers went to the frontier and, in fact, used that coupon to redeem their bounty land that they got as part of their payment for serving. Sometimes instead, they sold it to somebody who then went to the frontier and bought their land. And that's called bounty land applications. And we talked a little bit about bounty land applications in our class on land records, and we'll talk more about it when we do land records next time. It's amazing what land record can tell you about your family history. Okay, any more questions about these things that I tried to talk about tonight?
Nancy, I just want to make a comment for Michelle. I was in the Navy. The whole designation was it AR? I thought it was. And we had underwater welders on our ship, and our ship was ARS. And I think what that means, it's on the hull. It's the designation of what that ship does. And I think A stands for auxiliary fleet, which means it was a support. He's part of the support fleet. And I think R might have been rescue. So they probably rescued when something was hit. They would go in and they would patch that hole if the ship was still afloat. In our case, we actually had to raise one that was sunk. But ours, ARS, stood for auxiliary, rescue, and salvage. And so I just so you know, if you ever get into that military thing, that designation. And by the way, whatever your relative was, I didn't catch that but the work that they did was they really had to be pretty knowledgeable, not only in welding, but just a lot of underwater work. They had to know a lot about lift and all kinds of things. And then they had to be able to dive too. And sometimes they had to work in hard hat suits, where they're pumping the old Davy Jones locker type with a big old brass helmet on it, as well as scuba. So anyway, we worked on some operations, and I just want you to know that he was pretty accomplished person. Anyway.
Now, I think that you should look up that same information and find it on Wikipedia or someplace else and put that in under memories on Family Search so that somebody else can understand that was what he did and the significance of it. I think that's a family story worth remembering. Thanks for adding that.
Thank you.
See, my stories aren't the best stories. I'm glad that we looked that one up for her and got that bit of an idea. Anybody else have anything that they noticed tonight? Well, then I think it's time for the closing prayer.